Very early on, Jack Dalton was an organizer.
Jack was raised Roman Catholic in a very prominent Catholic family up on Capitol Hill.
Father was a doctor, his brother's a lawyer, he was a lawyer.
Jack was a very influential man in Seattle for his good deeds as well as his bad deeds. I think he was the state Democratic chairman. He was Senator Magnuson's campaign manager, and he knew everybody.
Well, he ran actually for Congress and won the primary.
He dipped into a trust fund of one of his clients and was found out and went to prison.
He embezzled clients' funds, and embezzling clients' funds is worse than first-degree murder in the state of Washington.
Prominent attorney sentenced to a state penitentiary for grand larceny.
And while he's in there, he found out, I have a drinking problem, I'm an alcoholic, and I need help.
As a matter of fact, I spoke about it at my AA meeting that night because it alluded to the fact that he was alcoholic. A group of us from Seattle would go to the Washington State Penitentiary at Walla Walla. In this large, dreary auditorium. It's cold and drafty and dark, and there's AA meeting going on, and we had brought the AA meeting inside there, so we had AA speakers from inside the penitentiary, from the Pioneer Group, and from outside, from the group of us from Seattle. And we're milling around, smoking, having coffee, or whatever we're doing during the intermission. Hi, I'm Ralph Bruxas, and I'm Jack Dalton. I said, Jack, it's nice to meet you. I feel like I know you, and we got to talking, and...
Well, I was on AA, and there was always at least 20 that attended the meetings, real good meetings. And they talked about a guy by the name of Jack Dalton that had gone a little bit astray, that was a member of that group, and he was at that time in prison.
I think it was the first or second day he was out in the yard, and he said to himself, I'm as tough as any of these guys here. And then the epiphany came. Yeah, you're so tough, you're walking in a prison yard in Walla Walla. And that was his breaking point. Look where I got myself.
So 2 months later, I'm back over there, and we ended up sitting together and talking, visiting. And he had an idea, said, I'd like to thinking about starting a halfway house when I get out.
People around the country were starting to open halfway houses for alcohol, drugs, and offenders.
Someone says, Jack Dalton has been released, and he wants to come to the meeting this evening, but he doesn't have any transportation. We went down to the bus depot, and here stands Jack. He's in a long overcoat, way down almost to his ankles, hat pulled down and down here. And he got in the car, and on the way out to the meeting, he talked about his prison experience and how he had started several groups while he was in, he called it the joint, and while he was in the joint, and the good men that were being released and just couldn't integrate into society, and so they reoffended and came back to prison, and some of them reoffended just to get a roof over their head and some meals again. And he wanted to start a halfway house.
He got out of Walla Walla with the suit of clothes and $50 bill, and went out, and he went to his old friends and buddies and told them about he wanted to do something to help people like they were, and he was tremendously convincing, and he was a super salesman.
Well, I'd been on A for a while, and I never heard of a halfway house. So he said, well, it's a kind of a stepping stone in the society. And when he got out to the meeting was already in progress. And when it come his turn to talk, why, he talked about this halfway house and how he's going to do it. And of course, we all said, well, we all just humored him. We knew it was impossible to do what he wanted to do. So Jack was out just trying to sell his idea to all these different meetings.
One of the AA meetings I'd go to occasionally, at least, was called the Edgewood Group, an all-men's group, and at that time, a very anonymous group. It was mostly successful businessmen that were in those days, nobody wanted to admit they were in a 12-step program, different than now. And I met Jack there.
In the Seattle Municipal Court, where the majority of my cases were public intoxication, at that time it was a crime in the city of Seattle to be intoxicated in a public place. But with all of these cases coming before me, I had heard about this disbarred lawyer, Jack Dalton, who had a program to help alcoholics. And I became convinced that the people who were coming before me were alcoholics. And when I heard about this disbarred lawyer who had a program for alcoholics, I had to meet him.
We started having meetings in my office on Friday evenings, and it was Ray Stewart, there was Ken Maxwell, there was Jack Dalton. Talk about this idea, and then it just took form.
Jack's idea was that he would bring in attorneys, he would bring in judges, he would bring in people that worked in the jails, running the jails, anybody that he could talk about Pioneer. And so they had lunches.
Jack showed me the list of the people that he had invited at his luncheon. I almost fainted. I couldn't believe it. There was nobody in the world could get that many influential people together but Jack. Was the chief of police of Seattle, the sheriff of King County, Monsignor Royce from Seattle University, and his assistant, Charlie Shadle, Superior Court Judge of Story Birdseye, and Judge Roy DeGrief. I'm sure none of you remember him, but he was a modern-day Roy Bean. Bring the guilty guy in and we'll give him a fair trial. Anyone that ever appeared before Judge Roy DeGrief, whether they were guilty or not, remember him, because he had a real booming voice. And when he got through dressing him down, they never forgot him. So the day we had the luncheon,
they didn't have any food. And so Jack said, well, Judge so-and-so and so forth, they're coming for lunch today, go find some. So this guy that worked as a cook, he disappeared and went out and came back loaded down with food.
We walked in the dining room and I almost fainted. Here was this beautiful table set, white tablecloth, great big pot of soup right in the middle, stack of sandwiches, 2 stacks of sandwiches, and a white cake and a chocolate cake. So we sat down, and of course, Judge Roy DeGrief was at the very end of the table. Jack was right alongside him. So the minute we sat down, Jack started his pitch. You know, I need this, and we gotta have this, and so the soup. Boy, I don't know where Geronimo got the ingredients, but everybody just slopping down this soup, and just absolutely quiet. And Judge and Jack, of course, he was making this pitch. And I remember Judge Roy DeGrief, he was on about his 4th bowl. And he says, Jack, let's not be horsemanure on one another around here. He said, if we're so broke and you don't have any money, where did all this come from? Jack says, this is our head chef. He also cleans out the place. He also swabs out the toilet. He does everything around here. He said, I'm not going to ask him where he got all these ingredients or where he got all the dishes. And he said, and this nice white tablecloth, I'm not going to ask him whose bed he got it off of. And Of course, that broke the ice right there. And everybody started talking at once. From that really changed everything.